bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right, welcome, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Dave Schrader is here. Today is May 2nd. This is Fade to Black, and we've got Darkness Dave here. And now I'm just going to let everybody know, right before showtime, I'm talking to Dave, and we're going back and forth, and my computer crashed. And so one of the computers here, and I rebooted it, and now I don't have my show notes up in front of me, so I can't say anything about Darkness Dave without my notes in front of me, and I feel lost. I feel lonely. I just don't know. Oh, now I've got my notes back. So now I can say Dave is an experienced paranormal investigator, host of a popular paranormal podcast, Paranormal 60 with Dave Schrader. You can also see him on Travel Channel, Discovery Plus hit TV show, The Holzer Files, Ghost of Devil's Perch, which is absolutely amazing. You can also recognize him from his appearances on Paranormal State, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Adventures, Screaming Room, Paranormal Challenge, Haunted Hospitals, Fright Club, and in the ShockDocs, The Curse of Lizzie, Borden, and The Demon in the White House, and so much more. And with that, I'm just going to go straight to it. Just say, welcome back to Fade to Black, David Schrader. How are you, sir?
Hello, my Schrader knots. I'm back. It's good to see you.
Man, it's a good thing. See, the Fader knots created
Schrader knots? What was it?
Yeah. The Fader knots created their own name. They did that on their own. That wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you get the Schrader knot idea from, Dave?
I only call them my Schrader knots when I'm on your show. But what I do love is that your fans, when I'm going to be on your show, will tweet out and they're like, all right, Jimmy's got Dave Schrader. Gather, Schrader knots. He's back on the show tonight.
They love it, man. They love it. But I do get I get a little commish on the Schrader knot t-shirts, right? I get a little.
Yeah. As soon as I put them out, Jimmy, I'll give you 95% of all of my Schrader knot memorabilia.
I get some VIG. I get the VIG.
That's right. All right. Well, welcome back to Schrader to Black. What are we talking about tonight?
Hey, this is, I've been thinking about this for a few days with you. And I mean, we've done so many shows together and so many things, but, and what hasn't been asked before, and you do, I know you do the same thing, right? I've had this guest on so many, I got to go into a new zone. And I was thinking about, the opening salvo and what it would be. And then I started thinking about myself and you and I and the similarities. And there's quite a few. And there's the obvious ones. But here's one that's a little more, a little more esoteric, a little more intrinsic, I should say, which is you and I have acquired a vast amount of knowledge. And that's what comes with hanging out with other people and doing interviews and just out there and asking questions. And you become a sponge and you get it from so many different mindsets and types of research and things. And you and I are right there in lockstep with each other. So the question is this, with what is it that you have learned? You have been at this for a long time, Dave. What is it? Is it something about the paranormal and supernatural? Is it something personal about life, family, the world, the universe? I mean, what is it that you have learned?
This will sound so, I don't know, tree huggery, but it's true. I've learned that education is an ongoing process. The things I believed in 17 years ago when I started my journey in paranormal radio have radically changed over these years. I'm not as solid on any one subject. I'm fluid. I take different people's concepts and beliefs and I listen to them and I realize that somewhere in between all of these theories is the truth. And I think it's sloppy. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and there's different elements of all of it. And I'm not, I guess I'm kind of eccentric. I go down the middle of the row and I take a little bit from every side that makes sense to me and keeps me moving forward because you never know who's going to have a new insight. I find that education comes from the most unlikely sources sometimes. It reminds me of being a kid. I was probably 16 years old. I was at Memorial Day weekend. We used to go up near Rockford, Illinois to this big campgrounds with our friends of the family and their kids. And I was an insecure teenage boy. And there was this really cute girl who kept eyeing me up from the picnic bench across the way. And I just didn't have the guts to go over and speak to her. And this 10-year-old kid, Tony, that we were friends of the family, came up to me, the 16-year-old, and he goes, "Why don't you go talk to her?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can't, no, I can't." And he goes, "Dave, she's a person just like you and I, and she's probably just as nervous about you coming over to talk to her as you are about her coming over to talk to you. Why don't you just make the first step?" And I'm like, "Okay, Yoda, right? What do you know? You're 10 years old. What could you possibly know?" But it gave me a totally different perspective. And I stood up and I walked over and I introduced myself and I had a great time that weekend with this girl and just had a great new friendship and somebody to hang out with that was my age and just had a wonderful time. But had that door not been open for me by a 10-year-old, I would have been sitting brooding and moody all weekend, wishing I was somewhere else instead of being in the moment. And I think that's what a lot of this has taught me is being in the moment more. Even when I'm investigating claims of the supernatural, I want to absorb the location I'm in. I want to listen to the people I speak with and hear their stories and their feelings and their way that these things have affected them. And whereas before it was all about me, 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 now it's about hearing you and learning from you. So that's kind of been the big takeaway for me over 17 years of doing the show and 55 years of life is, starting to just take it all in. And
Right.
what doesn't serve me, I eject, and what does, I keep close. And even the stuff I eject, I don't throw it completely out because maybe there'll be somebody that can explain it to me in a more concise, clear way later in the future, and I can retie it to that notion. So I just, I've just found ways to keep it entertaining for myself.
So Dave Schrader is a piece of clay. I get it.
Mhm.
You're malleable.
Mhm.
And you have
Right.
to be that. You have to be that way. You know what? I've been saying this over the last couple of weeks. I've got this like fear that
Mhm.
has entered me, and it's a strange one. And so let's talk about it, Dave.
Sure.
Let's get on the couch here for a second. You know what my Pandora's box is? You know what my
What
fear
is it?
is? My Pandora's box is that I become someone that doesn't ponder. Right? That would just freak me out. And I had I had a string of conversations over the last couple of weeks with some very skeptical skeptics. All
Mhm.
right. And when you're around them, dude, they have got the blinders full on. I mean,
Mhm.
full, dude, they're not curious about a damn thing. They're just
Right.
not. And it got me thinking, I would really, that would be, do you remember that what was that video with Metallica with the soldier that wakes up paralyzed?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh man, I can't think of it. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Oh, that's that, you open up your eyes and you can't move. That's a crazy fear. The fear of being somebody that doesn't ponder is worse than that Metallica video for me.
Yeah, who wants to just be in a place where you know it all? You're right. That would drive me bonkers. I prefer to feel like I've got a good handle on things, but what else can I learn from this? What can this person share with me that gives me a totally different perspective on it? Even the skeptical. I love good skeptics. I love a skeptic who will sit down like Dr. Michael Shermer to me is a good skeptic because he's respectful. He doesn't have to believe what I believe. He's not asking me to believe what he believes, but he's saying, Dave, this is why I believe this. And here's the logic behind it. And I appreciate that. Then there are bully skeptics who are just, well, what are you, an idiot?
Yeah.
Huh? What are you, an idiot, Jimmy? Well, you'd have to be an idiot to believe that. And where will that ever take anybody? That's not a dialogue. That's berating, over talking. I don't want to be in that position. There's what we do is a dying art form because you and I ponder. We think beyond the moment. You and I have both had compliments that I know other show hosts have not. When we get done, guests have said to me, I've been interviewed for 30 years. Those were some of the best thought out questions I've ever been asked. That was and it's because I'm not going down a list of the top 10 questions and not varying from them. And I feel sorry for the people that do that because, I joke around about, I was helping my daughter's class yesterday. They're doing a podcast deal for school in the final quarter. And they each have to pick a podcast topic, create a podcast around it. And so I was talking to them about podcasts, talking to them about how you have to kind of think outside the box and it's okay to disagree, but be polite with one another and listen to the answers that are given. Because, you and I could interview a guest and another big time radio show host could interview that same guest. And we could look at the 10 questions that were given to us. He can look at the same 10 questions and you ask, so Dave, tell me about that experience you had where you saw a talking bear. And I say, yeah, Jimmy, this bear came out of the woods and asked me for a picnic basket. And then he and his little buddy, another talking bear, grabbed it and ran off into the woods as Ranger Smith pulled up. And you would be like, wait a minute. You legitimately saw a pair of talking bears. Dave, how did that make you feel? And there's another host that'll look at the next question and say, well, what kind of sandwiches did you make that day?
Right.
And miss the fact that there's so much more meat on the bone. The 10 bones of a questions, the 10 points are fascinating, but what comes out of them is even better.
Mhm.
Digging deeper and listening to that guest for those moments when you can almost hear them break. And I don't mean emotionally, but they're back in that moment, and then you seize it.
They're back.
Yeah,
I love that when that happens, and it only comes with time. You cannot, you don't just get a USB microphone and plug it into an iPad and open up a YouTube account and suddenly have experience. It just doesn't work that way. It comes over time. There is an art to the interview. And how I've evolved, how you evolved. I remember listening to you, Dave, and you're going to take this the right way. You're a smart guy, but your style of interviewing has evolved. It's changed.
right.
And you are so strong today, and so have I. And anybody that does it over a length of time. Today is show number 1,802. 1,802. Just Fade to Black, not everything else that I've done, right? That's just Fade to Black. And if you do the math, and I'm saying this to everybody out there that's doing this or wants to do this, if you do a podcast a week, that's a heavy schedule. If you do a podcast a week, that's 52 a year. Okay, it will take you 40 years to get to 1802.
Yep.
That's and so that's what I'm talking about here. And you will even notice it if you're doing it once a week. But when you accumulate this, and like you have, Dave, you have really gotten on top of your game. When you look back, at yourself where you were 10 years ago. Do you ever go back and listen? I don't, by the way. I don't listen to my old stuff. But do you go back and listen?
It's funny. I just 2 weeks ago I re-released episodes from 2006 on my former show. I took those audio interviews because it was just the 4th anniversary of the passing of Lorraine Warren. And lover or hater, an amazing person, a lot of stories to share. And I was lucky enough in my first year of doing my show to land Lorraine Warren as a guest.
That's pretty.
And
That's pretty solid,
right? And we did this interview, and you can definitely hear I'm trying to be very NPR. I'm trying to be very stoic in my right. So my questions are like, "So Lorraine, take me back to when you first met Ed." Right. And it's cringy to me because I feel like, oh God. And Tim, my former co-host, would tell me, he goes, it was around season 3 you started to become Dave. And the guy I knew started to come through. And I remember having the aha moment of hearing the questions and the way that I spoke so deep and let me tell you about my sweaty balls and how good right. And you're like, oh my God, this is almost painful to listen to. And then I remember just sitting back one day and going, okay, people like me. I don't have to work so hard at this. Let me get more out of my head and more into the conversation. And I think I was lucky because I had enough basic wherewithal that, like in that first interview with Lorraine, it's one of my pride moments. And it's one of those that I'll go back to in my first season 17 years ago and play because I asked questions that she stops and she goes, David, nobody ever asks me that. Thank you. And I asked her about how she and Ed met. How did they get started together? I didn't want to talk about Amityville or The Conjuring or where did this start for you? And she was so touched. Ed had suffered his stroke and was incapacitated and gone really at that point, but he was still physically here. And I remember reaching out to her after Ed passed, and I just said, "I'm really sorry, Lorraine. I'm so sorry for your loss. I know he was the love of your life. I'm here if you ever want to talk." And her response back to me was, "I would love to come back on your show. As a matter of fact, you'll be the first show I'll come back on to." And she reached out to me, and 2 weeks after his death, she said, "I want to come on and talk." And I said, "Okay." I beat Coast to Coast. I beat every other show out there talking to Lorraine Warren because I showed compassion in that first interview and wanted to know something that I found fascinating. So I don't know where your stance has always come. I don't read the books. I can't read all the books of every guest that's sent my way. I might read bits and pieces or look at the topics to try to get a feel for it. I've always been of the mind that I want to learn along with my listeners. And I feel like if I know too much, I might forget to ask the rudimentary questions that you as a listener who might have just tuned in for the first time tonight will feel excluded because you don't know what I'm talking about. So I've tried to adjust through that.
Yeah, there's a certain art to that. I used to try to do that, read a book to completion before I had the guest on. And then I would have these notes. And you know what? For me, honestly, it killed the conversation. And I stopped doing that. Now you get a feel for the book. You can read the chapters and read a line and get a feel for it, but it'll kill the interview if you just know too much and you're asking questions that are a little bit too centric and specific to yourself and not in a more general sense. And it narrows down. I mean, to me, that's what I discovered about that. And the interview turns out drier because the guest gives these very specific answers that really, honestly, don't mean anything but to me. And if, people don't stay focused, right? And that's my opinion, but I stopped doing that. And Richard Dolan told me years ago exactly what you're saying. He goes, Church, don't read books, man. I go, what do you mean? Read the back cover. That's all you got to do. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah. And then go and talk to that author. And then, do it that way. Read the book later, but don't do it before the interview. I read all the time. That's all I do, Dave. I'm constantly pounding books, but I won't do it before I have a guest on. No.
Let me ask you, let me turn the table on you for a minute, Jimmy Church.
Sure.
If I may. So in all the years you've done this, if you could go back to any point in your career as a host, what one topic do you wish you would have taken a little bit more seriously at the start, or wish you could have adjusted your thinking on?
Bigfoot.
Okay.
Bigfoot. I was Michael Shermer. I was the Michael Shermer of Bigfoot.
Right.
For a long time. And where I am now, I'm getting caught up on my learning process with that. I think that everything else, when it comes to, and it could be anything, telekinesis or ESP or consciousness or UFOs or science and life, that's an evolutionary learning process, right? You're not going to learn all that in a day. But, and I've always had an open mind about it. I didn't have an open mind about Bigfoot. I didn't. I had made up my mind before then, and it took me a while to get off the to get at least into the center of the fence, right, where I could fall either way, which is where I am now. And it took a while, man. It took many, many, many years. I went into this. I had made up my mind about Bigfoot from when I was, very, very young. When and I'll tell you why that's a strange answer. I love the Wizard of Oz. Okay. So, and you remember, you and I are the same age. The kids today.
I got to know where this takes us. Wizard of Oz tying into Sasquatch.
Yeah.
You got me at the edge of my seat, Jimmy. Go for it.
Edge of your seat, because there was a time before streaming. There was a time before cable that when we had 3 TV channels, 4, maybe 1 UHF, but once a year they would play the Wizard of Oz, right? And it was an event. Dude, that was a friggin' event. Wizard of Oz next week. And I would lose when it would go from black and white to color, and just the whole surreal idea behind the Wizard of Oz. I was all in. But that kid that was all in on the Wizard of Oz didn't buy into Bigfoot. And it doesn't make any sense. It's like I'm a paradox. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it does make sense, right? Because everybody has a line. I learned the hard way. I had Rosemary Ellen Guiley, bless her soul, on our show. Boy, I can't believe she's been gone now, I think 4 years as well. Unbelievable. Yeah. But I had Rosemary on, and we had talked nightmares and vampires and ghosts and haunted locations. And then she wanted to come on my show to talk about fairies. And I kind of scoffed. And I'm like, really, fairies? And she goes, Dave, every night you talk about Bigfoot, ghosts, demonic possession, conspiracy theories. But the concept that fairies, which predate most ghost and cryptid stories, and people still believe in foreign countries. As a matter of fact, they will reroute entire roads to not upset a fairy bush or fairy mound. This is too far for you to believe. And then I sat back and I said, you're right. That's why draw the line there. And I said, well, I think it's because it's been so sanitized and whitewashed through Disney that to me, a fairy is this cute little flighty figure in a cute little green dress. And she was the first one to point out, what perception do you have of Tinkerbell? And I go, what do you mean? She was this sweet little, no, she was horrible, Dave. She tried to kill Wendy. She betrayed Peter Pan. She betrayed the Lost Boys because she didn't get her way. She was horrible, which is what fairies are. If you betray them or they feel pissed off, they can be your worst enemy. And I was like, oh, okay. So I got into her concept of the story, and that really opened up my brain to, I don't have to buy into what you're selling, but I sure like the sales pitch. And let me hear it, because maybe at the end of this conversation, maybe I'll be a little bit more open to that concept. And I was. And I think it's fascinating. I love that element. Do we have time before a quick break here or no?
Yeah, no, yeah, continue. Oh, but
Okay.
I want to stay on the fairies for a second.
Sure. Right.
I was filming scenes for a movie this week, right? So I'm on set, and I don't want to give anything away, so I'm not going to do that. But so I'm being interviewed, and one of the, so tell us something about you, Jimmy, that we don't know, whatever. I was like, fairies are real. Right? and I caught everybody by surprise, and I watched the whole room, like, what? And I said, yeah, big, tough, rough and tumble, punch you in the throat. Jimmy Church believes in fairies. Fairies are real. So there you go. And I knew that, Dave, I totally get it. By me saying that, I open up the door to all of the memes and criticism and jokes out there. I don't care. Right. I've had my experience, and that's where I'm at, man. I'm a piece of clay. I'm a piece of clay.
That's it. And I would have missed some fascinating shows had I turned a blind eye, because it just didn't make sense to me, and it was so ridiculous. I had one of my favorite guests way back in the day, this woman. I got her press release. It was in the Reporter. It was the RTIR catalog for radio show hosts, and the headline was, "Woman confronts Satan face to face." And I'm like, what? And this woman, she believes she dated and met the physical incarnation of Satan. And it was just this beautifully written blurb. I mean, it's like 3 sentences. And I'm like, I got to have this woman on my show. And I call her up and I have her on the show. And it was the most ludicrous, insane story. But it was so charming because she believed every bit of it. But she could laugh along with me. And I go, so, all right, Margaret, how exactly did you meet the devil? She goes, I love to dance, Dave. Oh, I'm a dancer. Ballroom dance, salsa. I love to dance. So I was looking at the Penny Saver. So for those of you that are not 50 years old or older, it was a little free magazine you'd get at your grocery store that would talk about garage sales coming up, and you could put in little personal ads to meet somebody. But there was an ad for this gentleman looking for a dance partner, and she responded. And I remember making the joke. I said, well, it's good to know in a down economy, even the Prince of Darkness has to go to the Penny Saver to get a date. And she laughed, and we engaged in this conversation, and it was complete lunacy. Now, it might not be such a surprise for you to find out that the devil owns a double-wide trailer in Arkansas where he keeps his concubines in 2 smaller trailers on the same property because, of course, Arkansas, right? Why not? That seems like as good a place as any for the devil to live. And we had such a genuine, fun conversation. She got how absurd it sounded and could laugh along with me. So I really enjoyed that conversation. But the absurdists, I grew up fascinated by Elvis Presley. And I remember getting the book by Gail Brewer Giorgio that came with a cassette. And it was, Is Elvis Alive? And I listened to that cassette and I read the book, and she had audio recordings of Elvis after his death. And I was like, what? Mind blown. So as an adult, when I'm hosting my show, I reach out to Gail Brewer Giorgio, and she agrees to come on my show. And she sends me an envelope that's like as thick as War and Peace. All this evidence she's collected over the years. And there's some great stuff in there, Jimmy. There's a eyewitness affidavit signed by Elvis. These are photocopies signed by Elvis like a month after his death that helped in bringing down this crime ring. It was signed a month after his death.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I buy into the story. I love it.
Right.
And somebody reaches out to me and they go, you got it. Michael Jackson faked his death. And I'm like, oh, come on. And they're like, go read this woman's website. And it's this horrible, it's mid 2000s. And the website looks like it was made in 98. And it's just horribly maintained and built. And I'm watching it. I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay. So I reach out to this woman and I have her on the show and she's into it, man. Full scale, like the Beatles album covers. She's breaking down every clue Michael's left behind. And it's hard to pass on it. Like the Escape album that came out after his death is called Escape. And there's like the universe behind him. And he's in this like black body bag looking thing as he's peering out at you. You're like, oh my God, yes, I totally see what you're talking about. She's friends with Michael. He calls her on the phone. Oh, sure. So we're just having this conversation, Jimmy. She texts me. He wants to call into your show. I'm like, yes.
Let's
I
go.
text her the number. I look over and my producer's on the phone and then he gives this look and hangs up the phone. And I go, who was that? He goes, some idiot call himself Peter Pan. I go, he's calling back. You put him through. And he's like, what? I go, put him through. And I'm watching the live chat right at the time. And I bring this guy on. This guy's spot on. His Michael Jackson impersonation, Jimmy, is so spot on. It's unbelievable.
That's radio gold. Radio
right.
gold.
We have this conversation and I'm watching the chat room. Half the chat room is, oh my God, Michael Jackson's alive. The other half is like, you're idiots. What's wrong with you? This is obviously a fake. But I love the conversation and how it sparked people. And I do this interview as I'm talking to Michael, and I refuse to play his game. I'm like, I'm not going to call you Peter Pan, because if you are who you're portraying yourself to be, I just want to say this. Aside from all of the controversy in your life, thank you for the amazing music. You opened up my daughter to music in a way I never knew was possible. My daughter was very young when Michael died, and she was deeply impacted by his death. So I thanked him for that. And I had this but I was tough on him too. I'm like, and I do need to ask you, I appreciate you calling in tonight, but why? Your daughter just attempted suicide 2 days ago. Why are you calling into my radio show? And there's this kind of pregnant pause. And Pearl, the woman that brought him on, says, things aren't always as they seem. Paris is going through something. She didn't really try to commit suicide. It's media's, blowing it up. And they actually had audio of Dr. Conrad Murray leaving a voicemail to Paris, which again makes you think, this is not the voicemail of a man who killed somebody's father. It was bonkers. And I'm talking to Michael. And the thing was, at the end of it all, I go, all right, I've watched the chat room. I've seen both sides of this conversation. And every night you tune into this show for escapism. You tune in to hear about Bigfoot and ghosts and fairies and alien abductions. But the concept that one of the richest and most eccentric men in the world might have faked his death to try to have a normal life, that's beyond your grasp of reality. You realize how absurd that is, right? That's probably more believable than Bigfoot. But let's play the what if game. Because 10 years from now, what if Michael does prove that he's still alive? And you were all tuned in that one night.
Right.
A small little Minnesota radio station got a phone call. And the audience went bonkers. And I loved it. And that was the end of the episode. And I thought I was going to take heat and abuse. People loved it because it became theater of the mind. And totally it let them in. Yeah.
I had a caller once. I'm going to get back to Michael. But anyway, I had a caller live on the air. Said he was the ghost of John Lennon. Right? And dude, it was awesome. And he called back a couple of times over the year, and it never had the magic of that first night.
Yeah,
man, it was a lot of fun. Have you seen the video where Michael Jackson rents like a Ralph's supermarket and hires a bunch of actors to act like shoppers so he could go in and shop and act normal? Have you seen that video?
No.
Dude, it's crazy. It's crazy. Just so he could know what it's like to push his shopping cart. And so everybody in the store, in the video, it's crazy. Dude, it's nuts. And everybody in there is a paid actor acting like they're shopping with shopping carts. And so he just goes through and he shops. Dude, it's like that. So yeah, I could see him pulling up. Have you seen, speaking of Elvis, have you seen Daisy Jones and the Six?
No.
Okay. You know who Riley Keough is?
Yes. Yeah, that's Elvis's granddaughter.
Right. Dude. So go and watch it. I think it's HBO. I don't know. It's HBO or Showtime. Or maybe no, it might even be Amazon.
Okay.
But go and watch it. It's an amazing, but dude. And so first off, she's a great musician, she's a great actor, and all of that. But you cannot get away from her voice and her eyes. Dude, it's just it's unreal. It's spellbinding. So go and check out Daisy Jones and the Six.
All right, we'll do.
On Pitch. What is it about now? You brought up, and I don't want to get morose here, but you brought up Michael Jackson dying and how it affected your daughter.
Mhm.
Isn't this like a dilemma that is kind of worldwide now, where because of social media, because of MTV Cribs, right? Whatever, that we are inside of musicians and stars and actors and whatever it may be, we are now feeling like we're all friends and we're a part of their lives. And when we lose somebody now, it
Mhm.
affects us emotionally like it never did in the past. Do you see that in your daughter? I know I did when David Bowie died. My daughter Nicole just completely lost it.
Well, you and I kind of touched on this before the show, and I've been thinking about it. See, the difference for me is like, all right, when John Ritter died, that really hit me. And it was, what was it, the late 90s, right? Maybe very early 2000s, he passed away. And the internet wasn't what it is today. And there wasn't, so it wasn't like I felt like I was a part of his life, but he had been a part of my life since the 70s, right? And I watched all the shows and all the movies and I enjoyed. I'm sorry, I have a high cat walking around here just tripping balls right now. So if you hear that howling in the background, Mr. Mittens, he no matter where I hide the catnip, he finds it, man, and he's I'm all toked up, Dad. Where are you? Anyway, so that hit me in the feels in a way that I couldn't explain, and I was really surprised by it. It was so sudden and just this integral part of my life, this comedic genius was gone. And then I thought, well, it's not always just about the accessibility. My daughter was, I think, 4 or 5 when Michael died. I want to say she was maybe 4, but she loved the music. Music transcends everything else. It can connect people in ways that I couldn't explain why this little girl loved his music so much. Children loved, like he was the Pied Flippin' Piper. There's something about his music that transcends age, religion, race,
Right, right.
and brings people together. And she was so struck. She was processing. I remember calling my ex-wife at the time and I go, "Did you hear the news?" And she's in the car. She goes, "No, what?" And I go, "Michael Jackson died." She goes, "No way." And I go, "How do you think Pacey's going to react?" She goes, "She's too young to know." She goes, "Are you sure?" And I'm going, "Yeah." She turns on the radio and they make the announcement and my daughter starts howling. No, no, no. She could grasp at that age what death meant. And it just killed her, and every place we go I remember that weekend we went to the band show, we were watching this, I think they were called Paperback Writer, they were a Beatles cover band at the park by our house, and they had these girls in go-go boots and, Union Jack dresses and stuff up on stage, and they were letting kids come up, and my daughter was up dancing with them, and she kept grabbing all the dancers and talking to them about Michael. She's like, "Did you know Michael Jackson died?" And she just needed to talk to somebody about it. She just couldn't understand it. So I think there's in the music world, it's one thing because music does strike us in a way. And I know you said with Gordon Lightfoot, it really hits you today. And
Mhm.
I'm on the other side thinking, I know 3 songs. It's interesting. What strikes people, right? If Bruce Springsteen died tomorrow, man, I'd be in a bad place for a while, right? Davy Jones died in 2012. And I remember hearing the news at work and I sat down in my chair and I just I voided out. That was such a big part of my childhood, the Monkees, and I watched them, and their comedy and music was so integral to me. And then I saw their tours from their 20th anniversary on, and I just took my family to go see them. And I thought it was so cute. They performed at the Minnesota State Zoo at the band shell. So I get to see the Monkees at the zoo with my family, right? And then like a year or two later, Davey's gone. And it was just, you do feel this kinship to people and celebrity that, and now you're right, it has gotten bigger and broader because Dave and Jimmy are on the internet every night talking and letting you in on our lives.
Yeah, that's
And
right. Yeah.
it's a one-way thing though. We've, all these great people in your chat, Stacey F and Philip Swain and Hadley and Kim and Ken, but you don't know them. And then you see them out somewhere and then they're like, "It's me, Ken." And you're like, "Ken who?" From your chat. And then they get like almost offended that you don't know. And you're like, "Buddy, please don't be offended. Remember, you're watching me. I'm not watching you. I'm sharing my stories. You're not sharing yours. I don't know who you are. And I'm sorry." And you kind of feel, I always feel bad for people that I feel like I wound them because I don't, but we're friends on Facebook. I'm like, I got 5,000 friends and 38,000 followers. I don't know you all. I'm sorry. But we talked 3 years ago. We exchanged about, and I'm like, "Ooh." So it has, social media has created a newer pathway to people in the public eye, even a low level celebrity like me.
It's a very direct one.
Right.
And, today, it doesn't matter. Who you are interested in or have fun with or enjoy or whatever. But there they are, man, live streaming. Hey, right? And doing the thing. You are a part of their world.
Right.
And we haven't figured out how to deal with that. I think that social media has come on so quickly, and live streaming and people that they say an influencer. I don't think that we have the capacity right now to understand the ramifications. What ultimately will this mean to us later emotionally, because we just jumped into it with both feet. We haven't, there's no studies done on the impact of social media.
Right. And we're too deep into care anymore.
It's it. It's over. We're up to here. That's it. We're already at the deep end of the pool, and you can't fix it.
I just saw, and I'm trying to remember what it was. I just saw an interview or a documentary, but they make this fascinating comment. Oh, it was the Brooke Shields interview, Pretty Baby, and it was a documentary about her life. And it's like, you have to realize how big Brooke Shields was. She lived in an era where it was like Michael Jackson, Brooke Shields, Bruce Willis, Sylvester Stallone, Schwarzenegger. These were your celebrities. There were maybe like 30 celebrities in the world. Then there were other actors and actresses and musicians, but there were 30 people that encompassed what celebrity is. Now there are celebrities you and I have never heard of that are massive. Their reach is far beyond Brooke Shields, and you and I have no clue who this person is.
Right.
And it's so interesting that we live in a world where fame is an interesting new deal. And you said you can't just plug a USB mic in, and you can, and people are doing it. And it's so strange, right? I've been in this business 18 years, and I feel like at times I'm struggling to maintain and remain relevant. And then some chucklehead plugs in his USB microphone and he's like, "Hey, yeah, my buddies and I are going to talk about cars, and tomorrow we're going to talk about a deck of cards," and they're getting 22 million views. And you're like,
yeah.
What am I missing? What's the lightning in the bottle? And people, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just that everybody can find what they're attracted to now.
Dave, my daughter comes home. This is how I'm going to offend half of my audience right now. Okay. My daughter comes home. She goes, I got the tickets. I said, cool. There were 1,200 each. I got 2. Cool. For who? The Weekend. I go, who? The weekend. How much did you pay for these tickets?
Yeah.
$1,200. What? It's the weekend. I can't believe it. And that was like 4 years ago. And when it was seriously like for somebody like me, I had never heard of the weekend. Today's kind of a name out there, and now below us and the other generations, they get it. I had never heard of them, you know. And you're looking at it, you go and you see a video these days of just like you're saying, a couple of dudes stepping off a private jet with bags full of $100 bills, and they're throwing it around, and who are these guys? But it's just like you're saying, Dave, that there are segments of celebrity that is so big where it's bigger than Brooke Shields being on the cover of every magazine for like 3 years straight. Every single week she was on the cover of every magazine, period. And her celebrity is not as big as the minor celebrities today. It's crazy. It's crazy thought.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I get to do all these conventions around the world, and I go to things like GalaxyCon and Wizard World, and you're around real celebrities, right? I'm around John Cleese and the Kids in the Hall and Billy D. Williams, and just names that to you and I are like, what? This is amazing. And then I look and I've got a line of people at my table, and some real celebrity is looking at me like, and you are who? And you're doing what? And then I look down the row, and then I'm feeling kind of, oh, look at this. I've got a line of people, and this actor has 4. And then I get humbled real quick when I look across, and there's a girl dressed like a character from Zelda, the video game. She's not even the voice of Zelda. She just dresses like Zelda. And she's got a line wrapped around the building.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's selling autographs at $50 a piece. And you're like,
Yeah.
it's not even like sexy Zelda. She looks like a dot matrix Zelda. What is the what? What is the what? And it's just so crazy what celebrity is at this point. And I love it. I love the fact that you can go and mingle about and people have these feelings. And I was sitting at this table with this one online influencer, and her father, Freckled Zelda is her name, right? And she's a sweetheart, and she's funny, and she's irreverent, but she was very she's a celebrity, and she had a crazy long line. And then she goes, and what do you do? And I said, I'm a paranormal guy. I've been on that. And her father goes, oh my God, you used to be on Coast to Coast AM. I recognize your voice. And I'm like, yeah, I hosted Coast for about 5 years. And he's like, dude, we loved when you were on. You were like one of our favorite hosts. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And she's like, I remember you. We used to sit in my dad's car and listen. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And all of a sudden the light tripped on for them, even who, where you fit in. And it's so funny that you're like, oh, yeah, I guess to them, I'm somebody. Right, to other people. But how, I got to ask you, Jimmy, you go to a big conference, right? You go do there's 5,000, 10,000 people in attendance. They want to meet you, take pictures with you, get autographs from you, everything. They're listening, hanging on your every word. And then you go home and got to take the garbage out and pick up dog poop in the front yard, and your kids aren't listening to you. Is that a weird moment for you? Because it is for me all the time.
It's every day. And then it's that moment at the conference. Somebody comes, yeah, I remember you on Coast to Coast. Yeah, you weren't as good as that Schrader guy, though.
Yeah.
And I hear that all
bitter pill.
Yeah, and I got to take it. I know what's coming. You know how you brace for the slap before you get slapped? It's like that. It's just like I feel it coming. But is it, speaking of death, though, because of the way that the media and the internet and the way that it runs today, death isn't any more common than it was in the past. The death rates are the same.
Right.
Is it going to seem more extreme because we are exposed to so much more? And
you know what I think it is? It's the unity of community, because before Entertainment Tonight, we're here to report the news, Michael Douglas has passed away, and you're at home and you're like, oh man, That's so sad. He didn't really, folks. I'm just giving an example. And you're like, wow. And then they're on to the next story. And that's the end of your morning.
Right.
Now Gordon Lightfoot dies. And I can go online and be like, wow, guys, Gordon Lightfoot died. You know, his music was so important to me. And then 500 other people chime in. Oh, I know exactly how you feel. I've seen Gordon Lightfoot 45 times in concert. So now this unity of community.
Right.
So it feels more impactful. And now, like my daughter was scrambling to find somebody she could talk to about this to process her feelings. Now there's a community online. And if I post about a death, I know it's good for at least 400 comments because people are going to A, want to give me support, B, share their own memories, C, talk about something that was equally as important to them. So it's that, I think, that brings people out of the woodwork to talk about things like death now.
I went to go see. I'm so glad you brought this up. We lost some of the big ones lately, and I'm talking about Eddie Van Halen, right? And of course Bowie, and the list is really, really long. But Glenn Fry was like a punch in the gut for me. And I went to go see the Eagles a few weeks ago, and the Hotel California tour. They played the whole album in order. Dude, it was pretty epic. Actually, I was in the fifth row, and they brought on Deacon Fry, and so he played, Glenn Fry's son, and he played about half the set. I don't know, but he did some of the songs. What's his name?
Vince Gill, isn't it?
Yeah, Vince Gill, who was amazing, by the way. I'm going to go on the record right now and say that dude really completed the band. It's very hard to do without Glenn Fry. So they bring on Deacon. And Deacon's a good kid, man. And it's got to be tough to go in and, fill the shoes of your father, who is no longer in the band. And for me, it was kind of, and Deacon's a great kid. You can tell he's very talented, but it kind of took away. I was thinking about Glenn Fry instead of the song.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? And it's
Right.
It's not because of the impact of media today on how Glenn affected me. Why would I care? It should be great. But for me, I couldn't get into the song. I was thinking about Glenn Fry not being there and Deacon having to be on stage, and it kept sucking it out of me.
I don't know. I liken that to the release of the Force Awakens movie when it came out. 2 days ago, I got to take my oldest son, and his daughter to go see Return of the Jedi for the 40th anniversary in the theater. And what's so cool about this is for the 20th anniversary, when they re-released Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back into the theaters back in 97, I remember them releasing it, and they were supposed to release all three, and I think they only ended up releasing the two, and we never got to see Jedi together, my son and I. And I've taken him to see The Force Awakens. I took all of my boys to go see The Force Awakens, but I, being media, had got a chance to go see it by myself with a media crowd. And I walked out of the movie not knowing how I felt about it. Kind of like seeing The Human Centipede the first time. You're like, I don't know what I feel about what I just watched, right? You're just like, what? I don't know what emotion I've got going. I feel like it wants to be nostalgia, but it's missing the heartbeat. And what was it? And then I went to see it again, and I had my oldest son, my second oldest son, and my two youngest sons flanking me. And my oldest son wanted to sit right next to me, and we're going to watch this. And it goes on, and I'm watching them out of the corner of my eyes. I keep turning, and I'm looking at them, and they're just absorbed into the screen. And when they go running by, they go, "What about that ship?" And he goes, "That old bucket of bolts." And there's the Millennium Falcon. My adult son, who is a Navy veteran and a Minneapolis firefighter, goes, and he got so gleeful and excited. And my sons just all were like, "Ooh!" And then when Chewie and Han walk back in, and they go, "Chewie, we're home." My kids, you could hear the excitement in their voice. It was radiating out of them. And that showing to me was so much better than the first one that I saw of the same movie. But it was in the context of I was seeing it through the eyes of my children, seeing this magic from their childhood and things that I'd shared with them before. So it took me out of the movie. Like when you went, you saw Deacon and all you could think of is Glenn Fry. That was my first screening of The Force Awakens. The second time I could just go in and enjoy the movie for the magic it was, because I was reminded of where it was taking me. Like people beat up on the last Raiders movie, the fourth Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. I unabashedly love that movie.
Is that
Unapologetically.
Is that with Shia LaBeouf?
Yes.
Right.
Beyond that, dude, that scene when they pull Indiana Jones out of the trunk and throw him on the ground and you see the hat blow into frame and the shadow on the car, you see him reach down and grab the hat and put it on and pull that brim down. I physically made this noise, Jimmy. like a teenage girl who just walked in on the band Hanson in their underwear. I was like, oh, I just was so excited to see that moment again. So I think I don't want to blame media or social media for all of these different elements of how how things resonate at the moment with you. And I talked about Davy Jones, that hit me. Peter Tork's death, not so much. Mike Nesmith kind of hit me hard again. Of the Monkees, and there are different people that play different roles in your life in different ways that are going to hit you in different things. But now you're right, we are more connected to them than we've ever been, and they're making TikTok videos and Instagram shorts and this and that, and we're always kind of around. It's almost like your neighbor, your friend, your nephew, your niece, your mom, your aunt, your uncle sharing insights into their life. So we're going to feel that, I think, a little bit more now than we ever did. Plus, we also have this weird separation, right? As close as the world has become thanks to social media, we are now more isolated and alone, I think, than we've ever been.
Yeah, it's that old story, the man that builds the fence around his house, right, to keep people out, but he's actually closing himself in.
Yeah,
right. And it's a weird way to look at it. And the other way, and I don't want to sound like some guru shaman dude, but when you're 5 years old, the monkeys are immortal.
Mm-hmm.
That's not anything that's going to end in your lifetime.
Mm-mm.
No, they're immortal.
Yeah.
And that's why decades go by, and everything is there. Eddie Van Halen, to me, immortal.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot believe he's not here.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense.
And I know they're always talking to Sammy and Dave, and they're like, "Oh, do you guys think you'll ever do a Van Halen reunion?" That would be sacrilege to me. I could see Sam and Dave going on tour and doing cover versions, but you can never have Van Halen, even with Alex alive and Wolfgang. It's not Van Halen without Eddie. That's weird to me, right?
Yeah.
There are certain things that transcend the band. Like if David Lee Roth died, you'd be like, "Oh, that's a part of my youth. Wow, that's good." Sammy Hagar, oh, that sucks. But Eddie Van Halen hits you deeper and in a different way than even the lead singers did for the band. He transcended what he was.
He did transcend. I mean, there are, and when you say immortal, like I do, Eddie, unless you were a guitar player or a musician in a band in 1978, when Van Halen blasted onto the scene, you don't really get it, because there was music before, there was image before. There was song. There was before Van Halen. Van Halen comes along like a supersonic space age gravity spaceship. It was unexpected, and nobody was prepared for that. And Eddie changed the world of guitar completely. Every guitar store in Korea, every guitar store in Kansas had to change what they did. Everything, and talk about transcending, and every classical guitar player wanted to be Eddie Van Halen. Mm-hmm. Every country guitar player wanted to be Eddie commanded the stage. He owned the audience and he had his own thing. And that's what everybody wants. You don't want to be Eddie Van Halen, but you want to be what Eddie Van Halen did, right?
Right. Isn't it? I think this is so interesting. The Beatles, there was an interviewer talking to Paul and he goes, I've got to ask you a question, right? What was it like to grow up without the Beatles? And Paul's like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you guys were a phenomenon for the world. There was never a Beatles for you. What was it like to live, even though that's insular, man, holy cow, that's a deep ass question. There was no Beatles. There was nothing that rivaled the Beatles. And there still isn't. You can tell me whatever you want. There's still nothing that rivals the Beatles in that way ever since. There have been bands that are close, and even Elvis and Frank Sinatra could be said at peaks that they certainly hit that level. But what's it like to be Elvis and not have an Elvis? What's it like to be Frank Sinatra? I mean, you could say there were contemporaries of his, Bing Crosby, and people that he kind of took the next, the torch on from. But for the Beatles, there was nobody before them or after them like that. And that's weird, right? When you think about the fact that some of these major celebrities grew up without knowing what it's like to live in a world with the Beatles.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's pretty heavy. It's a pretty heavy thought, actually. Mm-hmm. I've got to take a commercial break, so we're going to do that. When we come back, I've got some things I'm just going to run by you, and we're going to talk about these one after another.
Is that your polite way of saying, so I need short answers, Schrader? Short answers, an hour or two.
Only because we've had a pretty nutty week of paranormal and strange headlines around the news, around the world. And I know that you do the Paranormal 60, but this may be outside of that, but it may be inside of it. I just want your take on some of these crazy ass headlines, Dave. So stay right there. This is Fade to Black. All you Schrader knots, be patient. Dave will be right back after this short break. This is Fade to Black. Oh, once again, I'm not prepared. I sort of am, and I can do this now. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Please visit all of our sponsors. We're taking a quick break here. All of the links are below, and we'll be right back. This is Jimmy Church, and I want to introduce you to LifeWaves X39 Stem Cell Activation Patch, which has totally transformed my health, my sleep, brain, and my eyes. I no longer need reading glasses. X39 is a true breakthrough in regenerative science. Using light, X39's patented age reversal technology is clinically proven to signal the activation of younger stem cells, accelerating the body's natural healing process. X39 promotes restoration and rejuvenation, bringing the life-changing benefits that I've experienced. By naturally elevating a master signaling peptide in the body, X39 boosts vitality, health, and wellness, and resets 4,000 genes to a younger, healthier state. It's one patch, once a day, and you can turn back time with X39. Just go to healingworksnow.com. That's works with an X. healingworksnow.com.
Hey everybody, it's Billy Carson, also known as Forbidden Knowledge. I want to talk to you about a very special event coming up July 30th, 2023, the Forbidden Conscious Awards. We're going to honor people who have been contributing to the conscious community for decades. People that you know and love that have helped you get to higher levels of thought and consciousness and awareness. It's going to be a live in-person event, but seats are going to sell out very fast. You want to make sure you're there in person, and guess what? You can help vote for the winners. Voting is available on forbiddenknowledge.com, and the categories are going to be social media influencer, podcast/radio host, TV host, actor, director, producer, entrepreneurs, health and wellness, philanthropists, authors, field researchers, archaeologists, space anomaly hunters, and of course, a Lifetime Achievement Award. I'll be your keynote speaker that night at the Forbidden Conscious Awards. We have celebrity guests performing. We'll have a halftime show where we're actually going to perform music for you. And don't forget about the pre-event mixer, where if you buy a box seat, you'll be in the VIP section, and you also have private access to a VIP mixer with celebrity guests. Shake hands, break bread, network, and then walk the red carpet with us and take amazing photos. It's going to be a night to remember. You don't want to forget this. Make sure you hurry up and get your tickets because they're selling out very fast. I want to see you there. Forbidden Conscious Awards 2023.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, and this episode is brought to you by the film Accidental Truth. It is streaming now. You can go to Amazon. The links are below in the description box. We have it throughout social media. This is the documentary our community must see, must view. Accidental Truth. It is streaming now. Our guest tonight is Dave Schrader. And Dave, we've had a crazy few weeks here of headlines, and one of the things that broke out over the weekend was cattle mutilations in Texas. What went through your mind as you got this breaking news?
You know, I watched a documentary a number of years ago that was about the paranormal, and like all of a sudden in the middle, they just jumped to cattle mutilations. It was a weird transition, but this sheriff got word that there was a dead cow. So he actually went out, roped it off, and he sat vigil over this thing for like 3 days and documented it. And you know what? By the end of the 3 days, it looked like a cow mutilation. All of the soft tissue around the mouth, the private parts, the eyes had all gone. There was no blood anywhere because the blood had absorbed into the ground and the insects that eat it and do it had done their job. And the skin, all these strange branding marks. It was just the sinew part of the muscle texture and everything underneath the skin as the leathery outside just kind of clung to it. So the cow mutilation stuff to me has gotten, I don't know that I relate it to aliens because they showed how clean the cuts were. It looked like laser technology had eaten away. But remember, leather's pretty tough. We use it for a reason. And those insects could only eat the soft tissue, and they ate it as precise as they could because that's all they could get to. They will lay cows out, and we have Greg Lawson on a Paranormal 60 who's a cop and has been at the body farm, and he knows how things go. And he goes, you'll go and check these cows. They're just a big hollow shell because the bugs go in and eat everything out, and it looks alien in nature. It's an interesting concept. I don't know that I firmly believe that there's alien interaction with it yet, but as I said at the start of the show, I'm water. I'm willing to go with the flow and see where it goes. But I would say logically in science, being able to show me what insects are doing what and how the body decays at a natural rate, even in a 3-day span, 2 to 3 day span, I'm leaning more towards it's a more natural phenomena than anything else.
How this is where I get into head scratching territory, in that it's Texas ranchers, Texas Rangers, right? You have I've seen Yellowstone. I know what's going on with this, and they know, right? And so for them, they must see dead livestock all the time. It doesn't matter if it's goats or sheep or cows or what have you. And then you have roadkill and everything else. And for them to come out, the sheriff's department, and using all of the things that make you wonder, which is no blood, no footprints, no tire tracks, surgical precision, and the removal in a surgical way of different body parts that we all have read about over the years. That's the head scratching part. I don't think that if it's just something natural, that a sheriff or anybody else in law enforcement would alarm and freak out the community unless they thought that there was something else going on.
Well, you have to remember that not everybody's seen that documentary, and a lot of people do believe that aliens are mucking about with our livestock. So, I'm watching even in your chat room, they're like, bugs aren't what ate it. Well, it's nice that you know so well, but I've watched the science and I've seen it happen. And I have friends that work on body farms and know how everything from cattle to pets to humans break down. So that's why I said I'm on that post that's it. And just because you're in law enforcement doesn't mean you worked at a body farm, doesn't mean you've been there to see how this happens. And if you're prone to believe in the paranormal and the supernatural, and I tell you I found this cow and you go up there and that's something you haven't seen before, that can be very disturbing.
But
I'm not saying that it's not alien. Just I want to be clear about that. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I lean more towards science.
And I'm not saying it is. What I am saying is that ranchers and cowboys are dealing with stuff. They have answers for all of the things that involve a herd of cattle. And there's diseases that they're dealing with all the time. There's predators that they're dealing with all the time. They know. And so for them to go, okay, this is a mutilation, is a strange thing to say. A tongue has been surgically precisely cut out. Not that it was eaten by maggots over 3 days, right? They've seen this. To go in the other direction for professional ranch hands and sheriffs that are dealing with this all the time. That's the head scratcher for me. And the no blood issue and things. I don't think that they would say this if they had the answers to it out of the gate. That's the part to me that just seems strange.
Have we removed the corpse and have we taken core samples of the earth underneath the cow to prove that there is no bloodletting into that it hasn't leaked its fluids and blood into the ground by that point?
Well, wouldn't
so I would want them to do something like that before I would totally buy. If the complete area is devoid of blood, even soaked in and saturated, then it becomes even more fascinating. But I don't know. Like I said, it's interesting. I'm open to both sides. But I'd like to hear from people that have legitimately said, yes, Dave,
right.
Here's the statistics. We moved the cow, core samples under 4 different sections of where the cow was,
right.
By the head where fluids might come out, by the groin area that's been removed, and we found no blood. And it's not there.
They're the ones saying no blood. And here's the crazy part for me. I don't have an idea. I haven't gone and researched this. I probably should have, but I raised the same issue that you're bringing up right now. So let's think about how many gallons of blood there must be in a 2,000-pound cow. That's a freaking heck of a lot of blood.
Right.
So I would think, now I could be way wrong here, and I'm not a biologist, but I would only naturally assume that much blood draining out of a cow would have a dark spot on that dirt that would be ginormous. Dried, coagulated dirt, mud, blood, dirt, right? And they don't mention that.
Right.
And the other fluids from the body too as well. But by all indications, they're just saying that these cows were dropped there. Now, I'm not saying it was aliens. I'm not. I don't know what
Giorgio.
I'm not. Yeah, I know, right? But here's the other. But I would rather have it be aliens than some crazy satanic cult out there doing sacrifices.
Right.
That would freak me out, and that would scare me. So that's the point. That's the part where I arrive at it saying, I hope it's aliens, because
What if
I
it's just these cows took out some bad loans, they didn't pay back their bookie,
yeah,
they
could
were
be.
going to run their cow mouths and tell about this bookie, and this is how you handle things in the moob.
Now,
The moob.
and then they followed it up with an update 2
Mhm.
days ago. They found a 7th cow. Same stretch of highway, different herd, different piece of land. So that now they found a 7th cow. So yeah, it's weird. And one of the cows, strangely enough, post-mortem, died of pneumonia. Didn't die of the mutilation. And it's stranger still, right? And it doesn't make any sense, man.
Yeah, so now we got to worry about bird flu and cow flu.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know. Very strange.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about balloons.
New one floating around, huh?
Yeah, we got a new one near Hawaii, on its way to Mexico. And I guess the military has stepped in saying, gets near land, we're going to shoot it down too as well. Why all of a sudden are we shooting balloons out of the sky?
Hey, man, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but we've got some tension going on between Russia and China on us. And gathering intel on us is probably very important to all involved. And then you've got countries now that are saying, you know what? It's time we take some of the power away from America and the power of their US dollar. And a lot of these countries are deciding to go to different currencies, which can destabilize our finances. China, and if China and Russia are smart, which they are, and they can't beat us in a nuclear strike, but they can gain enough intelligence on us that they can sweep our legs and take, break our finances, our economy, our people, and then do their damage. I think that's what they're looking at. And right now, there's been a lot of seeds sown causing dissension. Even we're fractured, man. This country's in a world of hurt. And I'm not beating up on America. I love America, but there's so much derision and anger between the people. There's so much issues going on. We are ripe for a country that's decided this is when we take them apart. They're already at each other's throats. So gathering intel and information now, this might be the time. Plus you start building that paranoia. You start building even more distrust in your country, in America, because, well, why didn't we shoot it down sooner? We finally got the word that those balloons that were floating over, when we finally shot them down, by the time we shot them down, all that information that they'd garnered had already been transmitted to China. So they're building a pretty good disinformation or pretty good reason to discredit our own country. I don't know, man.
To be firing missiles over North America all of a sudden at balloons, to me seems rather sudden, when balloons have been a part of this planet forever, right? They've always been flying around. All of a sudden, we've decided to shoot them down. And there isn't really any indication of these other balloons aside from the Chinese, quote, weather balloon, that we're gathering intelligence, but we still will fire a $500,000 missile at it. Even though it may be something else altogether. It may be just a balloon with nothing attached to it. But now we're firing missiles. Why do you think we've, had this sudden interest that should have been there all along?
If you were running the country right now, Jimmy, knowing the issues we've had for the last decade, what is the right answer in handling this? If you don't shoot them down, you've got half of the country going, we're not even protecting ourselves. Our president's weak and he's an idiot and a doddering old fool. And we need a new leader or an old leader back in play who would have shot this and it would have never gotten this far to begin with. And then you've got people that are saying, why are we shooting this stuff down? Why are we wasting millions of dollars of are we really hiding UFOs? there's no right decision right now in our country. There's nothing that's going to bring us together until, like your opening, Ronald Reagan talks about what's going to bring us together is when we have a combined threat. When the skies light up with UFOs like Independence Day,
Right.
that's when everybody's going to come together and become the world, as opposed to Canadians, Russians, Chinese, French, Americans, Mexicans. It's going to be the world as opposed to a bunch of independent, angry people. And, you know, I believe that there's something big coming that is otherworldly. I believe that maybe some of this is to distract from that, so that if people do see things, they put it off as probably a balloon. I think there's a lot of things at play right now.
You've been at
Does
this,
that make sense?
yeah, which is why I want to ask you, once again, you've been at this for a very long time, but the one thing that I know that you haven't seen, because none of us have, is suddenly all of this is in the headlines at the same time.
Right.
We've got balloons, we've got UAPs, we've got Senate hearings, we've got the Navy, we've got Tic Tacs, we've got now cattle mutilations, right? Everything is all happening at the same time, and it's never ever been like this before, and you have to ask yourself why.
Well, all right, Jimmy, you've been doing this a long time. I disagree with your statement. I believe that this has always been going on, but hear me out.
Okay.
It's all fringe news, cow mutilations, UAP, UFOs. It's all stuff that mainstream's not going to look at, but it's been there. You and I have been reading these stories and seeing these claims, but now that the legitimacy of the news world, because they're covering what the Pentagon is saying and our sources, and they're taking it serious in the Senate and in Congress, now there's more power behind the other news stories. Now they're not as crazy and fringe, because you were laughing at us years ago for the UFO and UAP stuff, and now the government's going, we don't know what this is. We're confident it's not Russia. We know it's not China. It's not us. We can't say it's alien, but we don't know what it is. That opens the door to, let's throw in cow mutilation. And you know the old headline, if it bleeds, it leads. And it's close enough that this is going to be a clickbait, which is what this world is all about right now, is how do I get eyes on this? How do I get eyes on my story and on my website and on my podcast and on my news source? So you can go at it now, because mainstream media has made it okay because they're reporting on UAPs. Does that make sense?
It does, and then we take things one step further. All right, where it's like Hollywood just coming true, right? UFOs, cattle mutilations, Bigfoot will be next, right? And everything else that is happening, and then you throw in the Terminator and artificial intelligence and Skynet and right, and to talk about scaring the crap out of everybody. Artificial intelligence, which is something that has been debated amongst the big brains and the big thinkers out there, and the dangers of it and the advantages of it. I've got friends of mine that write AI code, and they are okay with it. But here we are now, where 3 years ago, Elon Musk gave us one of the most dire warnings about AI, which is it's a bigger threat to humanity than nuclear weapons. We need to be very careful. And then what does he do? He turns around and buys an AI social media company, right? Driven by AI, with AI bots all over it.
But if you want to know what the enemy's doing, you get in league with the enemy, right?
100%, no doubt.
But is there also a lot of this going on, a lot of smoke and mirrors, and look at the cards in this hand while I'm pulling a dove out of my hat over in this hand,
right?
Are we having so many things coming at us? Because what's really going on is even more terrifying. the way our government may be betraying us, or the way our government may be losing control of things. And oh God, how are we gonna, our food supply is drying up. If we admit our food supply is drying up, people are going to go into a panic, release a story about UFOs. Now, this is conspiratorial conversation and talk, but I believe that there's a lot to some of these sleight of hands, that let's keep you talking about tic tacs and cow mutilations, and you've stopped focusing on the fact that the cheapest meal at McDonald's is $11 now.
Right.
And that a head of lettuce is $7 and a carton of eggs is $6. Right? We're distracted by the bigger flash and bangs, that we're not paying as close attention to the little things that are going wrong.
So distraction, and it makes a lot of sense, though, right? It makes an awful lot of sense. I walked out of it has become the norm now that I don't think about it as much, but I walk out of the supermarket with a single bag that's half full, right? My reusable bag, $75. Right? And I walked into my car. I'm like, I just dropped $75 on what? And just look in there and go, oh my God. What? And I so distract me from that shock and awe, because
and you just keep nudging things like, look, concert tickets. I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan. He goes touring. Ticketmaster plays this new thing out, which is horrific. And Taylor Swift is dealing with the fallout, and all these other bands. And Bruce's kind of hands are tied. And everybody's like, oh, what's Bruce going to say? Oh, he's given in. He's sold out. No, he wants to tour. He wants to be seen. But this predictive deal now where Ticketmaster, oh, more people are buying general admission seats. They were 200. Now they're 350. Oh, there's even less supply and demand. Now they're 500. So in the span of an hour, the tickets that I bought for $200 for my wife and I to go see Bruce Springsteen, general admission, 6th row, standing room only, on the floor, by the end of it, we're selling for $1,100 a piece. And then 3 months out from the concert, they were selling for $2,500 a piece. And there's nothing you could do about it. And okay, we were outraged and we're disgusted, but I'm going to go see Bruce Springsteen, and you're going to go see the Rolling Stones, and I'm going to go see this, and we're going to accept it, and it's just going to become the norm. And then 2 years from now, nobody's going to be talking about it anymore. They'll be saying, man, remember when we used to be able to afford to go to concerts?
Right.
But the new play will be in, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's the way these things happen. There's got to be somebody that causes a storm. And then once everybody realizes the storm's not going away, we just get complacent and move on.
Is everybody looking at okay, stay right there, Dave. Do not move. Do not move. Just stay right there. I'm going to do this and say, is everybody looking at the halo that is around Dave? Look at this picture, man. Oh,
talk about subliminal messaging, right?
That is hilarious to me. Oh man, I got to get back on the left.
It's my logo, so you know.
Oh, but dude, it's look. Somebody just said all night. Oh man, look, Dave, look. Yes, all night. Wait a minute. This is great. So
like Dave was born with a halo. Thank you, flying monkeys. You understand me.
But this AI thing, a lot like social media, we've been warned about AI for a very long time. We've all seen Terminator, and Terminator 2, to me, Terminator 1 was more of a horror film. It was pretty scary, pretty violent. Terminator 2 was more of the philosophical, existential possibility kind of thing, which scared me a little bit more about the reality of what the future may bring us. And now AI is here. You know how
there's some brilliance to AI. There's some really amazing elements to this. There's this guy with his own home version of AI. He's releasing. So he just released Paul McCartney singing My Life by Billy Joel, and it's brilliant. And McCartney's alive and his voice is not holding up. But if I could hear new McCartney music that McCartney wrote and produced and sent his AI version of his voice, I would pay for that album because it's still McCartney creating it. I'm not as keen as Jimmy bought the rights to McCartney and his voice, and once he's dead, Jimmy starts writing some crap music and then pumping in Paul McCartney's voice to it. But there are different elements. You know, there's a company called You've, and it's You Only Virtual. And I think it's beautiful because it's going to help with the grieving process in a unique way that I living can make all these recordings and I can talk and it learns me. And then my children can, if I go, my children can talk to this and they're, Dad, I miss you. Oh, I miss you too, honey. And they can have this kind of virtual conversation. Now, to some people, that's horrifying. To me, I miss my mom so much, Jim. I can't remember her voice. I can tell you, I can hear Michael Jackson's voice speaking in my head. I can hear John Wayne's voice. I can hear Clint Eastwood's voice. And these aren't voices I hear every day. I heard my mom's voice for 50 years. I can't remember her voice. I would kill to have her voice talk to me, to on bad days, pick up the phone and go, Mom, I don't know what to do. And just have the voice say, it's okay, honey. You figured it out before, you'll figure it out again. Man, to me, that's an amazing mood. That's an amazing thing. However, I don't know if you saw this news story. People are saying if you get these random voice callers and they're asking a bunch of questions that seem random, don't talk, hang up, because what it is it's AI collecting your voice. And this woman got a phone call one night and she took the call and she hears her daughter screaming, please, Mom, help me. I need your help. And then this guy takes over and he goes, I have your daughter and I'm going to do horrible things to her. I want $50,000. You're going to pay this to me this way. And the mom's like, wait, what is going on? And the daughter's pleading in the background the whole time. And he puts the phone back to her and she has a conversation with her mother. And then he pulls the phone away. And this woman's in panic mode when suddenly she hears her daughter upstairs in her room and realizes somebody got her daughter's voice off social media, created this, and was trying to fleece her for 50 grand. That's terrifying to me. That is, and they say, have a safe word with your family. So if anything like that happens, you can say, if this is you, what's our safe word? Schrader nuts. It's always Schrader nuts, right?
That's right.
So I know the word, but that to me is the terrifying element to this of what people are doing and how good. There's this deep fake that's going on. I don't know if you watch on like the TikTok and Instagram. They've got Joe Biden and Donald Trump telling racist jokes to one another. And geez, you listen to it and you're like, if I didn't know this, if this just hit the news, I would totally believe what I'm watching because the video and audio are amazing. That's terrifying to me.
Yeah, I've seen some of the Tom Cruise stuff that's out there.
Right.
You can't tell the difference.
Nope.
You know, and that's with celebrities. But you're right. It will get down to the singular level, the micro, like that lady that gets, and I read the article about that, right? You get the phone call that we've kidnapped your daughter. We're no longer looking at a video of a deep fake of Tom Cruise. It's now gotten to all levels of society where this can have a direct effect on us. And that's scary.
Can I be controversial? I'm going to point out, you got a guy in your chat room. People like this guy terrify me. And hey, you can hate me for saying this, not Jimmy. But his comment, where is he? I can't see him now. He scrolled up, but he had some jackass comment like, well, if you're dumb enough to fall for this, you deserve it. No, if you're a parent and your child calls you screaming, logic goes out the window. You begin hearing your child in pain. The first immediate response to you as a good parent, as somebody who actually cares, is to be concerned.
Oh, I had look.
So I'm sorry, and I don't mean to go on the attack of the one guy, but that's the dumbest ass thing I've ever read.
Dave, I had that phone call from Mexico like 3 years ago. So I'm sitting on my back patio, and my phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's this girl screaming, "Daddy, Daddy! They've kidnapped me!" And I hear this guy yelling in the background. I'm like, what? And the call came in from Mexico, right, on my cell phone. And I'm listening, and for a split second, my heart burst out of my chest. Right? I was just like, what is going? I mean, you know, that tunnel vision, vertigo, Alfred Hitchcock, drawback, right? And everything just alters in your reality. That's where I was for a while. So don't sit here and say something as stupid as if you fall for it. That's somebody without a kid.
Don't believe it. Oh, it's that simple.
It's
Listen, no, I did. Listen, Jimmy, I feel bad about this. I grew up in the period of crank calls before there was caller ID. We used to prank call people all the time. And I did that trick. Oh, Dad, I'm in trouble. I got arrested. I need you to come bail me. Oh my God, where are you? They don't even question who you are. You're crying. You're a boy. I just happen to land the right number that they have a son who might be out that night. His first inclination is, where are you? How much do you need? I'll be right there.
Right.
And we'd hang up the phone.
Right.
It's not that the guy was a sucker. He was a dad that I woke up in the middle of the night.
That's right. That's right.
Or at 11 o'clock on a Friday. And he's like, wait, what's going on? And then what was so sweet is there were a few of them that are like, honey, listen to me. Listen to me. You have the wrong number. I'm not your father, or I'm not your mom. Tell me where you are, how much you need. I'll get it there. And then we'll get your parents to pay me back later. Don't worry about it. And that would hit me. And I stopped doing those crank calls as a kid because of that. I was like, there are some beautiful souls out there, man.
Well,
those are great responses.
What's worse, right? So you call up, Dad, listen, man, I'm in jail. I need $500 bail. And then click, who was that, honey? It was a crank call. Right. Right. My dad John get one call and he just hung up. He thought it was a crank call. No.
But there's going to be some great aspects of AI. There are some frightening aspects of AI, but what isn't there? I mean, if you look at all technology, there's some terrifying things. We're leaning into robotic surgery, right? That literally the doctor can be on the beach doing surgery on you. That's a far extended version of it, but these robots will be trained and can detail the stuff as well. That's terrifying. But if it's better than even the steadiest hand of a surgeon, is it worth the 2 deaths a year that'll happen because of it, but the 30,000 people that'll be saved because of the accuracy? There's always an element of loss in every new adaptation, right? Seatbelts, got to wear your seatbelt unless you're going 65 miles an hour coming into a truck, because it's going to pull the back of that car up and kill you anyway, right? So even technology that are built to protect you can hurt you. So,
well, what do we do though? What do we do? And it's inevitable. It's going to happen. What are we going to do when we have the deep fake AI of the Pope saying some crazy thing that upsets half of the planet, or Biden, or President, or Trump, or whoever, that it's going to take a few days for us to figure out. But in the meantime, the damage is done. What do we do about that? And then you have to turn around and defend yourself that it wasn't you saying that, but once people see it, they can't unsee it.
Well, it's like, the Dalai Lama story from a few weeks ago, right? Did you see that? Right, where there's a video of the Dalai Lama telling this kid to suck his tongue,
right?
And the world went up in arms, and I went up and I posted. I'm like, my God, where are we going on this planet? This is the Dalai Lama. And then there was somebody that wrote a very well thought out thing. And they're like, what you don't know about the culture is this. And this could have been complete fluff and BS, but it gave me another perspective. And they had this brilliant story of that you carry the candy to give the child when you no longer have the candy you give of yourself. And a kiss is just a kiss. And he asked the boy for a kiss. And the boy supposedly asked him for candy and he didn't have any left, and he said, you can suck my tongue. So it's being taken contextually out of order from what took place. To us on this side of the planet, it's like, you told a kid to suck your tongue, you dirty old pervert. On the other side, you don't know that this is part of a culture and a concept, as opposed to he was not really looking for them to suck his tongue. And the Dalai Lama is a goofball and a prankster. Everybody talks about it. Now, being honest with you, didn't do the due diligence to see if this article was true. But it was an interesting element that this woman came out to defend and explain this is what was really being meant and said, but it did taper down. So maybe there was some truth to that. You also might just be dealing with an old man who's senile, and as smart and as an intelligent and compassionate as he is, there's some misfirings that might be happening, or we're finally seeing something that's been hidden from us for a long time. It's so hard to tell in this culture, but that's why everybody, no matter what we see, we have to sort the information. But in all honesty, Jimmy, if I have a video of you that's released throwing the N-word around and these people got to die and that people got to die and da-da-da, of course, your initial reaction is going to be, Schrader made that up on AI. It's all because that's going to be the go-to now. You know, that was created through AI, unless 18 people have it from 18 different angles saying that same thing. That's going to be the go-to for all of this. So I don't know. We're not getting the truth in 90% of what we see out there. Even in my statement, I'm wrong, right? I'm putting out that 90% of the truth or the stories we're getting are incorrect. That statement is incorrect, but people will take it as fact because a guy on the internet said it now. So the world is in a weird place, man. We get our information from headlines that are often misquoted, misunderstood, or misrepresented, or used as clickbait headlines to get attention, and people take it as real or factual, and they post it up, and that's all you read about it. And now you're up in arms because the Dalai Lama wanted to suck a kid's tongue, but you don't know anything more than that, and that's disgusting, and I don't need to know more.
Yeah. I still don't know a whole lot about that story. I saw the videos and I saw the comments about it, and I backed off. It was almost too much for me to handle.
Right.
Which is also the impact that kind of stuff has on everybody. And
Right.
but here's the other interesting twist on all of this. If we look back at the conspiracy theories and conspiracies that have been laid out in the last 5, we can even go back 10 years. Some of the craziest, way out there stuff. And I had said to everybody going through this, they used to call me the king of conspiracy. I didn't call myself the king of conspiracy. Everybody else did. That's fine, because I love a good conspiracy. I like to go down the rabbit hole. I like to go and figure stuff out, or not. But if a conspiracy turns out to be true, that's scarier than it not being true. I mean, it's just insane, because some conspiracies are real. But I had warned everybody over the last 10 years, don't go all in. Don't go all in, because if you go all in, there's a possibility you can't come back off of it. You don't want to ruin relationships and family and friends and everything else. Don't go all in. Get close. Take a look, right? Take a look, but don't go all in. Take a peek, but don't go all in. So many did. And now we can look back at the last 5 to 10 years and go, did that really happen? Were people really discussing this in a real fashion? And if you take a look at something like flat Earth took hold. It took hold, Dave.
Oh, I know.
It took hold.
I know.
I mean, there is now it's not what it used to be, but so many went all in on that, and it's something that you really can't come back from. How can you say, well, yeah, I used to be a flat earther? What?
Well, it's not so bad. We all used to be flat earthers at one point, and then we learned science. So we changed. But I have a guy right now emailing me. He's like, I will convince you that we are on a flat earth. Please have me on your show. And I did that talk 7 years ago. And I had a guest not once, but twice, because his first visit with me was so compelling. I didn't say believable. I said compelling, that I wanted to have him back, because I wanted to let my brain marinate on the things that he said instead of knee jerk. And then we had him back on, and it was a little bit more contentious with the listeners on the second round, but it was still, it's interesting. And like I said, I find why you believe the earth is flat more interesting than if the earth really is flat, because truthfully, I don't care. I still have to drive to work and put my pants on one leg at a time. I don't care if it's round, flat, or a hot dog. Who cares? Who cares? What does that really have to do with the whole cosmic scheme of things, right? Who cares? But it's fascinating, and I like talking crazy once in a while and having a lunatic fringe conversation, because I like once in a while to have somebody kick out the moorings of my shored up home and make me go, hey, wait a minute, that sounds weird.
100%. 100%.
What if that's true? Oh no.
When I don't want to stay on flat earth for a whole large amount of time, but I keep going back, and I've had these different flat earther guys on the show, and I just always felt bad for them because of the way that they make themselves look. And then I ask myself, why do you allow yourself to buy into it? Or is it that they just want to debate and they're just a debater, and flat earth is the subject? You know, the debate team, you're on one side, you're on the other, pick a side and you go at it. And maybe that's just, they want to see how far that they can push it, because in the end, I just feel bad. I feel bad. Empathy pours out of me. But here, I wanted to say this. When I was a kid, I lived on this island that was connected. It was kind of like an island. It's called Fort Amador down in Central America, and off at the entrance to the Panama Canal, and off about 10, 12 miles out is this island called Toboga, and you could take a ferry out to Toboga. And the first ferry trip that I took, I was like 13, 14 years old, taking a ferry out to Toboga, and what I ended up seeing, I didn't realize was out there because it was so far away. But as you got closer to Toboga, what you didn't see from my house were the hundreds of ships that were out over the horizon waiting to come through the Panama Canal. They're all parked. They're all moored out there. And we come up over, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of ships. Whoa, that's a lot. Holy mackerel, that's a lot of ships. And it's only because the earth is round that I saw that. If it was flat, I would have seen it every single day. And no flat earther can take that away from me. They can't. You simply cannot do it. And if you look on Google Earth, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. You can see all the ships that are moored out there. And that's it. It's like conversation over. Now, one last thing. Hold on. Zombies. Is it, part of the UFO thing and Hollywood and everything else? Is the concept of zombies a real one? Right? The apocalyptic Earth. Dave Schrader and Jimmy with their apocalyptic Jeep driving across the wastelands, mowing down zombies.
First of all, you don't want a Jeep in the wasteland, because zombies can get into Jeeps way too easily, man. You want armored tanks. You want trucks that are fully enclosed, not a Jeep. Okay. Jimmy, I will follow behind you in your Jeep while I'm in my SUV.
My bad. Is it a is that something that, now that we've gone through the pandemic and seen what is possible out there, and we know.
All right, are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So, first of all, this is why zombies are so great at terrifying us or unnerving us, making us uncomfortable. I'm covering all those because I know you're going to have listeners. I'm not afraid of zombies. I'm covering the concept that they're unnerving, they're uncomfortable, they're unsettling. It's because it could happen to anyone. It could be your wife, your own child, and in a moment, They're a murderous rage trying to eat you. That's terrifying because then the enemy, Jimmy, is everybody. It's not just vampires with fangs or guys that turn into werewolves or galactic empire stormtroopers. It is and could be anyone at any given moment because we're all held up just fine in the church bunker. We're all fine, Jimmy. Your house is safe. We're good. We've got water and a water supply that's good for 35 years. We've got food and rations that'll get us through the next 25 years. We're fine. Hey man, I got to go to bed. I'm exhausted. I go into my room and I have a heart attack that night and rise from the dead. And you guys are all safe in your home until I come walking out and bite one of you. That's terrifying because it could be anybody at any time. And there really is no safe place because if you do come back from the dead to go into this feverish, angry, hungry form, there's no protection. You don't know when it could happen to anybody, right? So I think that's why it innately gets into our heads. However, I'm going to now give you a conspiracy to investigate. I believe that a zombie apocalypse did begin a handful of years ago. I believe, hear me out on this. You remember bath salts?
I do.
The drug bath salts, right?
I do.
This shows you how stupid I am. Kids are smoking bath salts. I was like, oh, that's baloney. I went home and I threw all the bath salts we had at home away. I'm like, my kids are smoking. Just take a bath in it. What are you, bath salts? And no, Dad, bath salts is a drug. It's not actual bath salts. It's just, that's the street name. I was like, oh, okay. But now going back into the reality of it, this was the news headlines for weeks that people were attacking people. There was somebody, they busted eating the face off a hobo. There was another woman that ate her grandchild. There were other attacks on family members. Well, what happens is the synthetic drugs strip part of the brain neurons, blah, 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 science, and that innate animal part of us comes out. So that is a zombie. Jimmy, bath salts haven't gone away. Are we agreed? That is still a drug that is still out there?
Yepers.
Why aren't people eating people anymore? Why aren't we hearing about those attacks? It's continuing. Have we just gotten so desensitized to it that, oh, it's just another bath salt zombie eating people? I think something did happen. I think something did go off the charts. We blamed it on a drug. We've got it under control now. We're not under control. And for you and your listeners, you don't believe me, go back. What was it? It was maybe 10 years ago.
No, the face eating, that was about 5 years ago.
Dude, you'd probably be surprised how much further out it is than you think it is. But yeah, go and start looking at zombie bath salt attacks. And it's like within a 7 to 8 month period, every week we were hearing these brutal attacks coming from all parts of the United States and around the world. And then it stopped.
Okay.
That to me is crazy. That's crazy, Jimmy. What happened?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, you're right. 2012.
Yeah, see, 10 years ago, 13 years, 11, 12, 13 years ago, that took place.
Okay, there was another one in 2014, 2016. Okay.
But that in 2012, when it first started, there was like a glut of them.
Yeah, in Miami.
It was every week that was happening. No, it was all over, man. It was all over. Now I'm getting all conspiratorial crazy. It's all over, man. Game over, man. But it was taking place. But you see, some of these attacks still do happen. I don't know that it's fully contained. That to me is a fun concern. That's like oh man, Schrader sounds nuts, but wait a minute.
It happened.
Bath salts didn't go away. Why are people not eating each other anymore? That's strange.
So they did what was that movie, Monkey Shine or whatever? So they did the containment and then blamed it on, they contained it and blamed it on bath salts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the zombie apocalypse started, but we stopped it. That's my take on it.
Yeah,
hey, when COVID set, and I still wasn't sure what I believed in all of this, I woke up one day, like all of us, and I had 2 weeks worth of growth on my face. I'd let my hair grow. I look crazy, right? My eyebrows were all askew. I was not in Darkness Dave mode. I was just crazy. And I sat down and I caught myself in the mirror and I'm like, You look like a lunatic. So I sat down and I started doing this video, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm thinking there's stuff going on, right, man? We're in the middle of a global pandemic, right? And at the same time, this global pandemic takes over, man, they start talking about aliens and UFOs and UAPs, and they're releasing videos. Why, man? Think about it. You know why? There's no global pandemic, but they're listening. The aliens are always listening. And we're trying to scare them off from taking over the planet, man. So it's War of the Worlds, man. The common cold could take them out. We're going to talk about this global pandemic, wink, wink, that's taking over the planet to keep the aliens from trying to take over. And I did this lunatic 5-minute video, and then I'm like, I got to go, man. I got to go. Things are happening, man. And I click it, and I put it up. And people laughed. And Jimmy, I got emails from a few people. Again, could just be complete BS, but a couple people from government agencies claiming, I know you think you're being a smartass, but you're a lot closer to reality than you know.
Right.
And I was like, oh, damn, son, what? So were they really people in the know that were trying to tip their hat to me, or were they just playing into the craziness? That's the whole problem, is we don't really know where everything comes from. We don't know this. And it wasn't me meaning to poop on the whole concept of COVID. And I know it was very real. And I lost over a dozen people to COVID during the height of it. Heartbreaking. I wasn't trying to decry that. It was just, I thought it was funny that during the middle of this global pandemic, suddenly we're going to start talking about UFOs and releasing videos and news to the, I thought, wow, this is really, this is weird. And how can I tie this together? And looking so crazy and conspiratorial, I just thought I'd release that video. But it's interesting how close we get sometimes. I have had phone calls where I hear clicking on my line. I don't know if you get that.
Every day.
Yeah, I get some weird stuff that happens. I get where I'm in the midst of writing an email about a sensitive topic that we kind of cover, and all of a sudden the email disappears while I'm in the middle of emailing it. And I'm like, what just happened? And I try to rewrite it, and it goes out again. And I reboot my system, and I go to my other laptop, and I'm like, maybe that computer's got a bug. And I start typing, and I get to that same point, and something shuts down my email at the same point every time. And then I go write another letter to Jimmy just to say, hey, Jimmy, love barbecue. How do you feel about the Partridge Family, Jimmy? Nobody interrupts that email. But the minute I start writing about a certain subject, my emails have been shut down. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
But Dave, what the funny part, or the fantastical part, or the conspiratorial part, or the supernatural part of all of this is the part that really isn't as scary as what the truth may be.
Right.
Right. That's what messes with my head. For instance, if we talk about the pandemic, right? And now you've got all the conspiracy stuff, right? The vaxxers have RFID chips in it, and it's for the Illuminati to take over the world, and it's this, or what, all of that conspiracy. You know what's scarier about that is that nature could take us all out if it wanted to.
Dude, we're boring into glaciers. Yeah. We're going 10,000 years back, and we're awakening viruses to see what they do.
Siberia is thawing, right? And that to me is much scarier than the Illuminati reptilian overlords, taking over the world with contaminated vaccines. That to me is much more frightening, and which brings up subjects like zombies. That's scary. The whole aspect of like the Tic Tac video, where aliens, they're here, they've got technology, and well, okay, and I clearly believe we are being visited every single day by ET, and they know that we're here. You know what the scarier part about the Tic Tac video is to me is that A, our government has technology that they haven't released, or B, China or Russia has that technology and there's nothing that we can do about it. That is much scarier. I would rather have it be ET. And
Right.
it's really the real truth. The conspiracy stuff, as way out as it is, and we can talk about it and think about it, that's great. The other part, a reality part of it, is actually scarier than what
Mhm.
everybody else wants to fight about.
I agree, man. You never know what's really going on out there, but that's why shows like ours are fun to listen to. And two guys that have the same passions can take two different approaches and looks at all of this. And still, look, I've disagreed with you, you've disagreed with me, and we're still able to have a conversation and we will talk again, my friend. And this is what the world needs to focus on, having disagreements, but having an element to talk with one another about this and why we believe these certain things take place or don't take place in a safe environment. And I'm proud of both of our shows that for the years that we've been doing what we do, no matter what the belief system is, we offer a safe harbor for people to come listen and share their thoughts.
Yeah, that all sounds good, Dave. But before the show, you literally said to me, Jimmy, I'm right and you're wrong.
But you didn't disagree. So that's the important thing.
Dave Schrader, you are the absolute very best, my friend. I've learned so much from you. Thank you. And you're absolutely right. The world just needs more conversation. That's it. That's it.
Right.
That's what we
Yep.
need. Where can
We need more Schrader to Black. That's what we need.
Where can everybody go and chase you down?
Paranormal60.com. Paranormal60.com has all my relevant information. You can find out where I'm going to be, what trips you can join me on, where we can meet up. You can listen to my podcasts. You can find my social media links and all of the fun stuff there. So check it out and be safe out there, folks.
Dave Schrader, everybody. Dave, be safe.
Bye, buddy.
Absolutely perfect conversation tonight. Dave Schrader, and his links are below. We've got him over on our website and throughout social media. Paranormal 60. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thanks to Dennis and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2023 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll see everybody tomorrow night. Until then, be safe. Go Backley Tappy.